Hello, my name is Ellie, the brand marketing manager of Eber. And what we do here is we're trying to educate marketers and also help the market understand retention as your customer journey rather than just a standalone journey. What you're signed up for today is our very brand new retention masterclass series, very well taken from our 2026 APAC Consumer Loyalty Report. And this series consists of 3 episodes where we're gonna easily build your understanding as well as some strategic tactics in terms of retention as well as marketing in APAC today. Now, before I start, if you don't know who Eber is, we are a retention marketing platform made out of these 5 pillar core solutions. So we support businesses within loyalty, marketing, messaging, that is your EDMs as well as direct messaging platforms, and all 360 consumer CRM, as well as commerce features for you to drive more revenue for your physical brick and mortar stores as well. And as mentioned, today you're sitting in the first episode of the Retention Masterclass series. It is the Consumer Loyalty in APAC 2026 report titled Retention is the New Revenue. Now, why do we say that, and why is that the theme of 2026, you might ask, right? And the reason is this actually, a look at what is going to happen in the next 5 years. It just takes us to look at what needs to be done in the last year alone. So in 2025, what we've observed is that APEC's next consumer middle actually rose to define growth in 2025. And so who are these people, right? These people are middle income households across APEC and are now expanding, which are making them the key demand drivers for your market alone. And what do? They spend intentionally, balancing price, quality, purpose rather than splurging randomly. And this group also includes emerging middle income segments within Southeast Asia and India and established urban families in China, Korea, and Australia. So, a little bit about these insights here before we just dive into episode 1, right? These folks actually focused on the essentials in 2025. So be it your food, utilities, transport, they still dominate. But one thing that has actually changed is a higher quality expectations within them all. Another thing that we've noticed is that discretionary spend didn't disappear. It actually shifted towards tangible everyday value. So you can see things such as jewelry, eco-friendly, reusables, homeware and lifestyle essentials. This is where your home brands come in a lot, and you're seeing a lot of mini lifestyle brands coming up, such as Miniso or anything similar, right? Anything that is very everyday value type of discretionary spending, you can actually see it on the rise in 2025, as well as home audio and entertainment gear. Now, 3 forces that actually converged in 2025 as we concluded is that number one, acquisition in marketing today is evolving as discovery becomes more AI and content driven. So if you are anything like me, I don't really Google things anymore. Sometimes I just go on ChatGPT and I say, this is my need right now. What's the best place to get XYZ? And usually it doesn't only just pull out places or suggestions, but it also pulls out an entire comparison for you to make better decisions. So if you're anything like me, you can see that kind of shift within our own consumer habits as well. The second force coming in 2025 is we're seeing a strong growth in e-commerce and omni-channel retail. And that is seemingly so because of all the major platforms that are uniting brick and mortar stores together, whether it be e-commerce platforms, whether it be the shop's own e-commerce platforms as well. These are some of the things that we're seeing happening in the last 5 years, and it's going to project us in how we're going to market in the next 5 years alone. Last but not least, we're also seeing because of the front two shifts, customer relationships are now moving into an always on conversational environment. And this is a very much big thanks to bigger platforms such as TikTok Shop, you have your Lazada, your Shopee, your Grab, super apps, and even brands are also starting to build the entire connectivity within their branding it alone through e-commerce platforms like mentioned before. So the story being last year, right, where we were telling marketers about how actually retention is where you should look at, because loyalty is something that is going to emerge within the next 5 years alone. And we're actually so excited to see brands taking that direction in itself, because within APAC alone today, loyalty participation is now mainstream, and 85% of Malaysian consumers do prefer to shop at retailers that offer loyalty programs. So, quickly, what does that mean for you today in the next 5 years? So, in terms of retail as well as F&B alone, we're seeing a high growth, about a 9.8 CAGR, with an 8.2 CAGR compound annual growth rate within these two segments alone. So, with that being said, you are in the gold zone where more spending is coming up, discretionary spending is coming up as well. But the real question is, with so much competition, how can we train behavior? Because most businesses think loyalty programs are just about points. But the real questions that we should ask is, can we train customer behavior? Because when behavior becomes a habit, your customer base expands without having to require customers again and again. So think about your own routines, right? Your morning coffee runs, the cinema you go to for movie nights after work, the karaoke place you go with your friends for birthdays, the brand you buy gifts from during festive seasons, right? What are some immediate brands that you start thinking about when Christmas comes along, for example, and you want to buy a gift, right? These behaviors feel so natural, but many of them were actually intentionally designed for us to shop in that way. And so before we talk about points, tiers, and rewards, right, we need to understand how commitment builds over time. So, the commitment levels actually takes up 3 levels. And today we're going to look at the very first level. Turning transactional loyalty into emotional loyalty is essentially where you want to go to. But the very foundation of it is, can we build habits? So when you're thinking about building habits, you're thinking about behavior-based rewards, you're thinking about points, right? And your goal here is to build habits across your online and in-store channels. And you're also trying to train your customers to come back without reacquisition. So this will be your foundation. And so today we're going to break down 3 things operators need to understand. First is how to design reward structures around real customer routines. The second is the habit mechanics that actually increase visit frequency. And then we're going to look into how tiers and milestones and things like that create visible progress that keeps your customers coming back. So when you're thinking about building a frequency of habit, right, you need to think about what is the actual frequency. Does your business acquire for a daily or weekly habit? Is it a business that caters to social habits? Is it a seasonal habit business, or does it comes with retail habits? Is it associated with an in-store experience? Is it associated with a specific mall or a community hub? Is it associated with seasonal timelines? And you're also thinking about membership habits, which this you have full control over. So one thing to think about when building habits is, of course, progress visibility. Customers repeat behavior when they see things like streaks, tiers, milestones, points accumulating. And this is where loyalty mechanics like tiers, points, and milestones starts reinforcing the habit. But when you think about this, right, you're starting to think what makes a streak work. And these streaks actually consist of 3 strong things. So the first is, does it match your natural frequency of your business? Is it done within an achievable window? And does it also provide an immediate feedback loop? And we're also seeing a lot of mistakes coming in when brands are designing things such as streaks and and milestones, right? But before we dive into that, let's kind of look at what does it mean by natural frequency match. So as mentioned just now, what does your business actually cater to? If it's a coffee shop, how frequent do you want your customers coming back? Versus if you're a higher end brand, would you want your customers to come back every 6 months and or so? Is it done within an achievable window within your natural frequency? And does it give instant dopamine? So why do some streaks or most streaks actually fail? It's actually because of these three mistakes, right? The first one is the wrong frequency assumption. So some people mistake a daily streak for an actually weekly behavior. So for example, the same restaurant asking for daily visits is not very realistic. But most operators think that streaks are about discipline, but actually they're not. They're about designing around real customer frequency. Now, the second mistake that most of us actually experience as consumers is some of the streaks are maybe too punishing. So what do I mean by that, right? If you miss one day, you reset to zero, and this actually kills motivation instantly. If you're anything like me, I've experienced that before. I've accumulated, maybe I think I spent about like 500 ringgit on a certain makeup brand, and because I missed one streak, the entire points just went missing. And so that was very, very demotivating on my side. And last but not least, we're also seeing another mistake, which is a delayed reward. So this can look like when your reward is too far away. And if your customers don't see progress fast, they usually disengage. So ask yourself, how often do my best customers already come? This can actually help you understand what kind of frequency that you want to base on. So, of course, you want to take the best layer, the best 10% of your customers, and try to scale that 10%, right? That's how you can start thinking about it. So within 100 customers, right, what are my 10 best customers doing and how often do they already come? Then design, because your streak has actually just got to be slightly above natural behavior, and that's how you can scale and grow your entire process. So across business types, right, if you're thinking about it, if you're a coffee shop, maybe a natural frequency would be 3 to 5 visits per week. So a winning streak could look like 5 visits in 7 days. This is a more extreme side. You could also start with like maybe 3 visits in 7 days, and you kind of move them up the tiers. You can start thinking about it that way. In terms of casual dining, could be a weekly thing. Group dining, monthly could be. I've recently group dined at a restaurant, and they actually gave me monthly vouchers to come back with my friends again and again. So that is also a very helpful one. If you're running retail, things such as monthly or even every quarter would kind of work, seasonal drops and things like that. And if you're doing services like beauty and so on, every 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the treatment cycles. And usually a milestone would work better than a streak. All right. So now that we've understand streaks and behavior training, right? Hooray, progress unlocked. Now we're going to understand a little bit about tiers, milestones, and progress systems. What's the psychology behind it? And how can you tie all of that into building habits as the foundational layer of your retention strategy? So there's a thing that I want to introduce to you, which is a very long time coming theory about psychology, and it is called the endowed progress effect. So, if you think about it, right, why do people actually continue when they're already halfway through something? It's because stopping means losing progress, and that's actually the real engine behind loyalty systems. And so, what we can understand here is that progress creates psychological momentum, because once a customer starts progressing, they don't want to reset because they feel invested, and which then make them more likely to return. So this is actually what turns one visit into multiple visits. And your goal here is to really build this momentum loop as you scale your retention strategy. So it goes from motivation to action to progress, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats in itself. And these are some of the curated mechanics that you can use for building your momentum loop. So think of these things like tools. right? You have your stamp collection. This is best for high frequency F&B. You have your tier systems, some multi-visit shops, and long-term retention strategies. You could also layer them, by the way. And then you have your milestone rewards. This is very helpful for mid-frequency businesses where they come not so frequent, but also frequent enough to get them looking forward to the next milestone. You have very fun and gamified progress bars. You have also an expiring progress. So this works very well for re-engagement and inactivity to kind of motivate them to come back with the expired point progress. So now you've seen the tools, how do you then maintain this momentum? Sometimes when we start very small, we lose it very quickly because there's no right strategy to actually maintain it. So the first thing that I want you to consider is if a business doesn't have a starting momentum. What businesses usually do is that the progress starts from zero with no boost. You just start, you sign up, you just start zero, nothing much. And why it breaks is because there's no initial motivation to help the customers get started, and there's no first repeat. So what you can actually do is you can give an instant hit start, such as a welcome progress or first reward fast. The second thing that we're also seeing is a lack of feedback loop. So usually we see brands and businesses give very invisible progress. So points that accumulate very silently. They are not very updated. Every time they make a transaction, they don't really see what's actually going on besides the membership that they just show. So what we encourage you to do is you have to make your progress visible and trackable. This can be done through the UI alone. This can be done through communication such as emails, DMs, reminders, point reminders, and so. But also another thing that is very, very important is that in human touch, right? To be able to train your staffs or your operators to communicate that and to emphasize on that really, really would help you build the customer relationship, and also help your customers take this retention program seriously. Now, third point is what's next, right? A lot of customers are left thinking about what's next, and that's because there's no visible milestones. So a little bit tying into point two, usually there only a final reward exists, and there's no mini milestones to keep them motivated, no mini milestones to keep them motivated to work towards that large reward. And because there's no short-term wins, we see a lot of drop-off in retention programs that provide no milestones. So what you can do is you can add reward checkpoints at the 3, 5, or 7 visits, depending on how you want to design your journey. And last but not least, there is no room for acceleration. So what we mean by this is maintaining momentum is actually so important when you have an accelerated pacing. So a lot of brands actually fail because it is always the same reward pace throughout the entire journey. So it feels very still, very one-dimensional, and it just feels like it's a very lack of engagement for the customers and the brands in itself. So what we can do here is we can add bonus windows and multipliers depending on any trigger that you want to reinforce within your journey. So to tie it all up, right, progress must feel close enough to start, fast enough to continue, visible enough to track, and valuable enough to care. Now, moving into our very last point for today's webinar, I have a question. Between customers, between purchases, does your customer interact with your brand at all? And this question actually probes us because it's starting to help us understand the commitment between purchases. Why is it so important? And what actually drives commitment between purchases? So what does commitment between purchases can actually look like tangibly, right? These can look like things such as referral behaviors, where your customers invite friends or earn rewards in between their purchases. They have something to do. Engagement behaviors such as app opens, spins, check-ins that they get rewarded for. Visit behavior, even if they don't spend, they walk in, they can scan, and they can check in of some sorts. Social behavior such as group bookings, you can reward group bookings, you can reward celebratory bookings, right? To be able to encourage that kind of social behavior. Content interaction, this is when you draw feedback reviews, polls through MPS forms with your customers, or even just throw in fun quizzes to educate them or also help them understand your product better. These are some of the ways that you can engage them between purchases. And last but not least, even better, you can get them to pre-commit even before they think of buying. So this can look like top ups, membership, paid memberships, gift cards, store values, and things like that. So one of the very, very fun things that we've actually found in terms of gamification is Shopee Pets. So Shopee Pets is so interesting because you actually have to take care of this pet and you feel responsible to have to log on to the app to just take care of your pet every single day, right? To feed it. And it's just like a very small, fun element. But you can kind of see where big brands are going into because of how they understand the importance of engagement between purchases. And a lot of other examples here are also beauty insider challenges such as Sephora. We can also take Grab, for example. Of how they gamified their entire experiences with challenges and so on, just to keep their customers busy and their brand on top of their minds in between their purchases. So customers can return even when they're not buying. And this is one thing that I really want to emphasize here because a lot of the brands that we work with as well, they've learned to reward things like daily check-ins. They reward customers when they play games, and that really, really builds up engagement. A simple thing such as spin the wheel is also such a powerful, powerful tool already for you to run engagement strategies within a click in itself. So, brands that win in 2026 and even moving forward, right, are brands that becomes part of their social routines. So, instead of your usual spend 50 and get a reward, which is also just as great, but you can actually think about it and start approaching it with visit streaks, referral rewards, and birthday dining perks. So, to tie it all off, today we've actually learned to build habits, right? We learned how to think about habits in a way that is emotional, psychological, strategical, as well as engagement strategies through gamification and so on. And once again, these things are supposed to help train your customers to come back without you having to constantly spend on reacquisition. So, what's next then? In episode 2, we're going to learn about how to build spend predictability. You've already built customer behavior. What are you going to do with that, right? Your best bet is to build spend forward. So, you get them to pre-commit. It also helps them increase basket confidence over time, which helps them associate with your brand even better. And it also reduces dependence on constant discounting. Now, if that's something they're interested in, be sure to sign up for our next episode. And I want to end with this. The best loyalty and retention programs are the ones that build convenience, continuity, and commitment ready platforms for their customers. So thank you so much for joining today's quick webinar. I love to keep the webinar short and sweet usually. And if you haven't already gotten your hands on our latest Consumer Loyalty in APEC 2026 report, do so here in this QR code. It'll send you straight to a quick form and you can download it entirely for free. And there's way more insights, benchmarks, ROI benchmarks, and so on across different industries, as well as APEC alone for you to dive in. All right, I'm just going to leave this slide for a bit more here. And I just want to thank you so much for joining the entire webinar. And I'll see you next month for episode 2.